Welcome to Legends.
So there I was behind the bar, somebody nursing a drink like it was giving them some advice. When a guy points to the master flag on the wall and says, "You ever think about how much history sits inside of one of those green jackets?" And I tell him, buddy, that jacket has seen more pressure than a submarine door. And tonight's story involves a kid from Ohio, a presidential candidate who lost to Truman, and the greatest master champion in the history, spending 2 decades wearing a dead man's coat. If that sparked interest, welcome to Legends, Between the Azaleas. Jack Nicklaus didn't drift into golf greatness. He didn't build mystique through silence or sneak up on the sport while everyone else blinked. He walked in, looked at the landscape, and decided he was going to measure it. Big kid from Columbus, solid build, glasses, not a swashbuckler like Arnold Palmer. He didn't have the theatrical flair of someone trying to sell tickets. Jack didn't need to sell anything. His swing did the talking, and he spoke in complete sentences. At 20 years old, he nearly wins the 1960 U.S. Open at Cherry Hills as an amateur. Nearly. And that loss might have saved him from himself. He played the final rounds with Ben Hogan, feeling the weight of history at an age when most people are still figuring out how to parallel park. And he lost. Later, Jack would say not winning that tournament was one of the best things that ever happened to him. Because if he had won at 20, his head might have inflated beyond usefulness. Instead, he learned something even better. Everybody gets nervous. Everybody makes bogey. Pressure isn't unique to you. It's universal. 2 years later, in 1962, he turns professional and walks into Oakmont and beats Arnold Palmer in a playoff at the U.S. Open. 22 years old. Takes down the king in his own backyard. That wasn't arrogance. That was preparation meeting opportunity and refusing to blink. Then comes 1963, Augusta National. Now, understanding something about Augusta, it's not a golf course. It's a psychological exam with azaleas. The greens don't shout, they whisper. The slopes don't scream danger. They politely ruin your afternoon if you get careless. You don't overpower Augusta, ask Bryson. You have to outthink it. Jack walks in at 23 and wins his first Masters tournament. They bring out a green jacket for the ceremony. The problem is, it was a 46 long. Jack, 43 regular. That thing fit him like he borrowed it from a taller cousin. Sleeves long, shoulders wide. He looked like he was about to read the weather on the evening news. But it's Augusta. You don't complain about it. You smile, you put it on, and you understand the symbolism. He comes back the next year. Nobody says a word about tailoring him properly. Instead, there's a jacket waiting for him in his locker. Turns out to belong to Tom Dewey. Yes, that Tom Dewey, former governor of New York, the Dewey of Dewey defeats Truman, the man permanently attached to one of the most famous incorrect headlines ever printed. Now here's where it gets good. Dewey had been a member of Augusta. Dewey had passed away, and someone from Augusta quietly decided since Dewey's green jacket was available, Jack could try it on. And he put it on, and boy, it fit perfect. Like it was waiting for him, and that was that. For the next 20 years, every time Jack Nicklaus won the Masters, every time he returned to the championship, every time he walked through Augusta's clubhouse as part of the inner circle, he wore Tom Dewey's green jacket. And nobody corrected it. Nobody stopped and said, hey, maybe the guy who's about to rewrite this tournament's history should have his own coat. He just kept wearing Dewey's. Now think about the irony. The greatest Masters champion of all time wearing a jacket of a man most famous for losing and being attached to a premature headline. And Jack, he built a career on refusing to assume anything was finished until the final putt dropped. 1965, he wins the Masters again. Not quietly either. He wins by 9 shots. 9. That's not a victory. That's a statement. 1966, he becomes the first player ever to defend successfully at Augusta. 1972, he wins. 1975, he wins again. 5 green jackets, still wearing Dewey's coat. Never officially fitted for his own. Meanwhile, he's stacking up major championships like firewood, US Opens, PGA Championships, Open Championships across the pond. 18 major titles by the time he's done. 18. A number that still hangs over the sport like a ceiling nobody can comfortably touch. But Augusta was personal. Augusta was where discipline met opportunity. And then comes 1986. Jack is 46 years old. In golf terms, that's not young. That's nice to see you out there, a polite clap, a ceremonial tee shot, the quiet assumption floating around the clubhouse that the Bears' roar has softened. You can almost see the headline forming. Nicklaus is finished. Dewey energy once again, assumption before confirmation. Then Sunday happened. He birdied 9, made the turn. Birdied 10, birdied 11. The course demands restraint, starts bending just enough to reward patience. And then the iron at 16, high, soft, hanging in the Georgia air like it has a destination already chosen. It lands, it checks, and it rolls towards the hole, like it truly understands the history. The roar that follows isn't polite, it's seismic. Jack wins his 6th Masters at 46 years old. 6 green jackets, still technically wearing Deweys, still not an official fitting. Let that sink in. For over 3 decades after his first win, the most dominant player in Masters history was slipping on the jacket that originally belonged to a former governor whose most famous moment involved being declared a winner way too soon. Finally, in 1998, Jack is sitting with Jack Stevens, chairman of Augusta at the time, having lunch before the tournament. Casual conversation, sandwiches, and then Jack tells him the story. Steven looks at him and says, "You what? You won this tournament 6 times and nobody's ever given you your own green jacket?" Jack says, "No, sir. There was no drama, no resentment, just the facts." He leaves the lunch and goes home. Comes back for the weekend. There's a note on his locker. "You will go to the pro shop and be fit for your green jacket." 35 years after the first Master victory, that's when he is finally measured. Same shade of green, same tradition, just finally cut for the man who earned it 6 times over. That was the same year they dedicated a fountain between 16 and 17 in his honor. Permanent stone, his record carved into Augusta's landscape. But for decades before that, he just wore Deweys. And maybe that's perfect, because Jack's career was never about entitlement, it was about earning it again and again. He once said losing the US Open at 20 taught him that everybody else feels pressure too. That you don't panic just because you're making a mistake, because the field is human, and that lesson built to his longevity. 19 runner-up finishes at majors, 19 times right there again and again. That's not dominance through flash, that's dominance through discipline. The green jacket story isn't about tailoring, it's about patience. It's about understanding that assumption is fragile. Dewey had the headline before the votes were counted. Jack waited until the final putt dropped. So, let's toast to Jack. To Jack Nicklaus, to Augusta National, to green jackets worn long before they were properly fitted. To losing when you're young so you can win when you're ready. To longevity over assumptions. May we all grow into jackets we've borrowed. May we all outlast the headlines written about us, to the Bear, to Augusta, and here's to next month's legends. Next month, we leave Georgia and step into something far stranger. Because if you thought that 1,000 cigars was excessive, wait until you hear about the time the CIA decided one could explode. Cold War paranoia, covert absurdity, and a cigar that never was meant to be lit. But that's for next round. For now, let's enjoy the Masters and let the azalea settle the score. Cheers, Salancha, and I look forward to seeing you next month. Now, let's go watch the Masters. Let's go, Scotty.